and I heard something going. The problem with us when we get to starting about something, we never actually finish it because we branch off into so many damn different directions that every one of them has very important meaning towards what we're discussing in the first place. What we call a Bigfoot and a Sasquatch, we call them boogers in the South. I said, what in the hell is that?
Good evening, folks, and welcome to another edition of Bigfoot Outlaw Radio. And tonight we have our buddy, fellow outlaw, Matt Knapp, here with us. You out there, Matt?
I am here, rooting and ready to go.
Good. And of course, got our fellow research partner, Bear. He's here in the house with us.
Yeah, how you doing there, partner?
Yeah, and I am Tim Coonbow Baker here from lovely state of North Missouri here, trying to keep from getting blown away by a tornado tonight. And our special guest tonight is our friend Kain Michael from southeastern Ohio, and he has one of his research buddies with him. So I'm going to turn it over to Kain. And how you doing there, Kain?
I'm doing good, guys. How you doing?
All righty. Good to hear from. Good to have you on here again tonight. So I'm going to let you introduce your buddy.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, as always, guys. And my research partner is a longtime friend and fellow research partner, Eric Tipton. We've been doing this together for several years now, and I'll just hand it over to Eric.
How you doing, guys? This is Eric Tipton, Kain's research partner. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on the show with you guys. It really means a lot to myself and to Kain being recognized by you guys. It really says a lot, and I appreciate it.
Well, y'all earned it your own self, guys.
Yeah, we're proud to have you. Yeah, you're sort of Bear mentioned it earlier, but you guys now are sort of where Bear and I were 20 years ago. Just getting started out. Well, we've been researching for quite a while, but y'all are about the age we were at 20 years ago. So,
right.
Yeah.
I'll trade places with them if they give me the age.
Yeah.
I ain't giving up the number. Sorry.
Tonight we've got a sort of I don't know if you'd call it a round table, but we're going to do a question and answer show where we're taking we've gotten a bunch of questions that were submitted by our listeners, and we're going to try to get through as many of them as we can, and we might get through 2, and we might get through 15 of them. Don't know, but we're gonna give them a shot and work our way through these questions. So I'm gonna turn everything over to Matt now.
All right. More than likely, we'll probably get through 2 of them. But let's just jump off in here. Kain and Eric, you're our guests. I'm going to throw the first one to you guys first. It comes from Bill Loika. He said he's going to ask the same question he asked last time we did a show like this. Apparently we didn't get to it. Sorry, Bill, but here it is now. He wants everybody's opinions on what a Bigfoot is.
I'm going to let Eric start that because Eric's had a full-on sighting up close. So I think I'll turn that to Eric first, and then I'll comment after.
I'll tell you what, guys. Prior to my actual full-on sighting, I really didn't look at him as any more than just a big hairy ape. Since my sighting and staring eye to eye with this thing and there's no doubt in my mind, and I will argue this with anybody, that there is a DNA within both of us that we share.
I agree. Keep going.
The traits that this thing has, in their face, staring in his eyes, man. It was looking at a soul. I mean, there's not many animals out there that you can really look at in the eye and see a soul. You know, the facial features were had very predominant Native American in it. There's no doubt in my mind after my sighting. I will share. I will say that there is human trait in them, most definitely human DNA that we share.
Yep, I agree with you. I believe that boogers they're either some kind of an archaic human species that survived and was able to maintain its genetic uniqueness separate from us, but still so close to us that that they could interbreed with us if they wanted to, or that they're a human species that took a separate evolutionary path at some time in the distant past. And but I think they're a whole lot closer to us than they are to the great apes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I believe they coexist with us, because they don't directly compete with us. I'm not an anthropologist by any means, but I know their social customs, their habitat, their feeding habits, their physical and cultural development, and their biological characteristics are different from ours, but they're still so close to us that they could interbreed with us if they wanted to.
I think there's probably differences for, people have different sightings, and they see different things. So there's probably just not one, but there's probably several of these branches off the human tree, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And, they've settled in different areas. But, the one thing I can attest to is the intelligence. I mean, people don't give them enough credit of how smart they are. And in our research that we've done, their intelligence is undeniable. There's a reason why they don't, that people aren't getting pictures of them, and they think that they're just this big dumb animal out there, and they're wrong. There is, I tend to agree with you that it's probably like just another branch off the primate tree that evolved separately from us, but they're smart. Yeah. And, they're not smarter than us in technology, but they damn sure are smarter than us in the woods. They're survivalists. Yeah. And I think their strategy, we've dealt a lot, and I tend to think that somehow, like, as a human, when we're out there and we're trying to outsmart them, we're thinking of the next step or the next two steps. And they sure seem to be able to outdo our strategy. Like their strategy in the woods is better than ours. They're we'll go around over here to the left. We'll try to flank them, and they've already gotten past that. Their critical thinking when it comes to their home, their environment, their survival is way smarter than ours.
Yeah,
they've already done it.
We're trying to outsmart them, and we're trying to outsmart them in their living room.
They've already done it. They've already done it with Kain and I. I mean, they've already adapted in the area that we're in. They've already adapted to our routine, and they've already changed their routine to what we do because we're there so much that they have literally adapted to us now, and they do things totally different now. Than
that's
when we
logic.
first started going. And that's logic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a human trait. That's logic.
Exactly.
Keep going. Y'all,
Exactly.
I'm just listening to you guys. Keep on rocking and rolling. I can get wrapped up in this. You guys have hit the nail on the head. I think it's actually a relic type native. In other words, what Eric initially mentioned, he said that he believes that they are Native American, and I'd rather use the word native, but we don't mean no insult by it in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Me and Kumbo, we have spent many a mile going back and forth to a million locations to having this exact same discussion, hadn't we, Tim?
Sure have. And we've seen the same thing, that as the boogers in an area got to know us, their reactions to us changed tremendously. And they went from being belligerent to apathetic to then just jacking with us on purpose, messing with us, which I think that's the younger ones. I think, and I honest to God think they're counting coup on us, just like the Plains Indians used to do.
Yeah.
Well, once when they recognize that you're out there, and then they understand after a certain length of time that you don't mean any harm. You're not out there to bother the young ones or the females. You're not out there to mark trees to be cut in the near future and so forth and so on. Even toting or carrying a pistol on your hip or whatever. After a certain length of time, they adjust to the fact that you don't mean any harm. And, I preach respect and patience, and that's the level of, in regard to when I say respect, they realize that, at every little sound that they make on purpose to catch our reactions, that we're not slapping down on the side of our hip to snatch that hog leg out and twirl around and point it at them. They realize then that, we are smart enough and different from all these other hairless type two-legged people wearing all these different colored clothing outfits on over their bodies, that we're sort of not like them, that we already realize they're there. And once they realize that you realize they are there, the game changes. And it's kind of like they accept you to a large degree, and then it's like, okay, game on. What have you got planned for us today? And they really interact with you in that regard. A lot of people sit there and, when we speak of interaction, they think literally that we, walk right up to them and we're, like playing cards. No, that ain't how it works.
Right.
But, Matt, you have anything to add to this? Because you're part of all this too now.
Oh, I agree with everything that everybody's saying. The experiences I have had have definitely led me down the path of believing that they are some, I say a type of human.
Right.
Not us, but not different. They have something that is lacking in the rest of the animal kingdom, in my opinion, and that's their forward thinking is like ours. Animals are very responsive. They react to things that dictate what they do in their behavior. These things think ahead. They aren't just reacting. I think they've noticed that. They use it in their day-to-day survival, and they toy with us at times and do it to us to make us react to things, like making a noise to see what we'll do.
Yeah. You talking about your forward thinking, Matt. It reminded me, Barry, you remember my scuppernong vine I had right there in the corner of my yard?
Sure do.
Down in Mississippi. And you remember that? You remember that summer I was watching those things, and I was watching them, and I was planning on making
you were slobbering at the mouth. You couldn't wait.
Yep. I was gonna make a bunch of preserves and wine and stuff like that with them. And I went out there on a Friday afternoon, and I'm looking at them. I said, "All right, tomorrow we're going to pick these dudes. Got up the next morning, there wasn't a one left. They were gone. Gone. All of them.
See, there's so much really in this question, that Bill asked. There's so much more that really can go into this. My thought processes, they didn't evolve from us. I feel that we're the bastard child of them. That we evolved from them. Why are we hairless? Why do we have to cook meat before we eat it? We didn't have to do this when Cro-Magnon man didn't have to sit there and fry up a piece of deer meat before he ate it. He ate it raw. So there's so much more that goes into Bill's question, but it's a great question, but that's my take on. I think that we actually evolved from them. I honestly do.
Well, I always made the joke, the old saying, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Mm-hmm.
Kumbo and Matt both have heard me say this a million times. I'd always say, well, which came first, the Bigfoot or the native? And
right.
A lot of people be scratching their heads when I say that. But due to the things that me and Kumbo and others have found over the years, if people cannot correlate native, what they have learned about various natives across the North American continent, and then look at what a booger is currently doing, and not see the correlation between this primitive style type methods like tracking and survival and the whole 9 yards. I mean, think about it. Over any length of time, say for instance, a whole tribe back in the day, and I'd always tell this, and I'm talking about way before the Europeans come to this country, even possibly before the Vikings come into the northern part of the North American continent. Natives didn't have a written tradition, journals. They didn't keep journals. They didn't keep diaries, so forth and so on. But they would pass it down from generation to generation by word of mouth. And that's what we've learned, and how we know what we do up until this point in time is from finding out these native traditions back a long time ago. But each tribe would always try to literally annihilate or destroy each other. Well, in every tribe, you would have different sects or sections. Like you'd have a warrior section, you'd have a section that would guard the camp compared to defending the camp. And the ones that guarded the camp, their first priority was always to protect the women, the old people, and the children. Whenever a neighboring tribe would attack them to conquer them, their intentions was to annihilate it, or either kidnap or steal the women and particularly the children to assimilate them into their own tribe. Mm-hmm. During the course of this type action, a certain sect, SECT, of the warriors would defend the camp, while a certain section would be responsible for getting the older people, the women, and the children out of the camp. And after the battle was done and over with, of course, they would still be able to capture a few children and women, so forth and so on, the ones that survived the attack, and they'd bring them back, and then they'd have their big war dances and celebrations, and vocally declare, well, we wiped them out. We annihilated them. Okay? Mm-hmm. Well, say if a certain part of that tribe got away. And you're also talking about a time way back when that it was imperative that you didn't build campfires, because anybody, another opposing native, would see a campfire at night, even in the mountains, because it reflects off the lower branches of the trees and everything else. And your tribe just went through this ordeal. Most of the warriors were killed or whatever. And here you are hiding and running for your life, basically. And you had to adapt to colder weather, without fires, without cooking your meat, so forth and so on. Because, you know, this is a serious business. If you're caught, you're probably killed or assimilated into an opposing tribe. Of course, the older people and the weak children of the bunch will be the first ones that will succumb to these type conditions. And over a length of time, say 5 or 6 years, or maybe even longer, due to evolution would automatically, since you never built fires or things like this, would take over, and you'd start growing hair upon your body, you know, and this is over decades and centuries, and it could probably evolve into what we have right now. Evolution and natural selection dictates that you grow in stature too. So who's to say that this is not what has happened? And that's just my theory.
Right
I'm done now on that long-winded, but I had to throw that out there. Maybe it meant something because I had your attention for a few minutes, and I hope the listeners, I catch their attention too. Which came first, the native or the booger? Who knows?
I think they came at the same time. That at some point, you know, they split. You know, from some common ancestor back at you know, at some point in time.
Exactly. Humans don't evolve into other things. We evolved into a human.
Right. Right.
Kumbo. Donnie Sanner had a question.
All right.
He says, with booger reports on the rise, it makes you wonder why. I don't think we have more boogers, do you? I wonder how much of this has been created by hunting on a regular decline for years and the deer population exploding to record levels. Is it possible with habitat declining and deer population exploding, especially on the East Coast, that man has created this problem? With more people, more deer, and less habitat for both, have we forced boogers to show their hand? I am talking about east of the Mississippi River.
That's a good question. All right, I'm going to try to go through the different sections of it here. Let's see. All right. First of all, I believe that we do have many, many more boogers than we did 100 to 150 years ago. And the reason for this is that I believe that when we Europeans brought, you know, the white men's diseases to the Western Hemisphere, we wiped out, you know, a huge major portion of the native or original nations' populations. I mean, that's a proven fact. But I believe we also wiped out a major portion of the Sasquatch BigFoot population as well. You know, that they're close enough to us genetically that they are susceptible to our diseases. And however, over time, the remnant, you know, surviving populations of both Indians as well as boogers, they have developed resistance to the white men's diseases, and they have slowly recovered on their own. But because of the explosions and spread of deer, elk, turkey, and coyote populations, as well as other animals such as, you know, wild hogs and such as that, plus the transition to large-scale farming and ranching operations, where men are in the field only a few times a year, and then only relatively briefly, plus the steady migration of the human population from rural farms into urbanized areas, this has left astoundingly vast areas of the country that are totally vacated and devoid of Homo sapiens, you know, humans, most of the time. And the food supply in those areas is very abundant. You know, I believe that they can feed off of our corn and our wheat crops and our soybeans and stuff like that they grow. that we grow. Plus, we've got this greatly expanding, wildlife population, large game population. So these factors have tremendously supported an expanding booger population. So there's a whole lot more boogers than there used to be, than there were 150 years ago or 100 years ago. Plus, deer we know for sure that deer and coyotes have adapted to living in close proximity to and even inside of urban areas. Well, we've got a whole lot of evidence and a whole lot of sightings and reports that support the fact that boogers have also adapted to living in close proximity and even inside of some of our urban areas. So they have lost a lot of their traditional habitat. We don't have near the large undisturbed, especially east of the Mississippi River. In a lot of areas, we don't have very many of these large undisturbed tracts of forest land that were their traditional homes before. And, this is because of changes to our farming and logging practices. But they've still flourished because of the much more abundant wildlife populations and their adaptation to being able to live in closer proximity to us and taking advantage of alternate food sources such as dumpsters and pets and such. Also, part of his questions he had want to know about how hunting seasons have affected them, and I believe personally the hunting seasons do apply localized pressure to some booger populations. As a matter of fact, the ones that migrate onto our farm down in my family farm down in northwest Alabama, they come in the fall, and they migrate into our farm right before deer season starts.
And why is that, Tim?
And they come from an area where there is a lot of deer hunting once the season opens, and they show up on our farm in early October. Bow season usually opens mid-October, and where they come from, and you can tell when they're moving because you hear the neighbors and stuff along that travel corridor having sightings and stuff. You know exactly where they are by the talk that you hear around the post office and around the little country cafes and stuff, and people that you know, and they always arrive on our farm right before bow season starts, and they stay there until on up in about April, and they leave. But and there's another reason why they stay. Basically, deer season ends around the end of January, but I think that they stay there till after the breeding season is well over with, and after things have greened up good, and there's enough food along that travel corridor, vegetation and such to help hide their migration as well as provide them, forage on the way back to their home area. So basically, as far as the increase in booger sighting reports, I think there's a lot of different factors, but to me, my belief is the three major ones are, number one, there's a whole lot more boogers to see now than what there were back around the turn of the century, between the late 1800s, early 1900s. And number two, there are more boogers living in closer proximity to urbanized areas now, and near a lot of our roads and highways, which are our major travel corridors, and they have to cross these things, to move around their habitat. And number three, there isn't nearly as much stigma attached to a booger sighting as what there used to be. Used to, if you saw one, you didn't talk about it publicly because people thought you were crazy because of all the stuff on the TV and, folks like us blabbing about it on the internet and everything else. People are much more open and willing to talk about what they've seen than they were even, 20, 30 years ago. So Bear and I used to talk about that back in the day. There was probably 1,000 or more sightings for every one that was reported.
Right.
And it probably still is in the hundreds and hundreds of sightings before, for every one that's reported. So that's my take on the question. So y'all jump in there now. I'm gonna shut up.
What do you think, Kain?
I think one is these things. I think instinctively they don't overeat. Just the way they move and their routes, they do it in such a way, and it's something that me and Eric have really been researching, is their travel routes and how they travel. And I think it's just by pure instinct, but the way they travel, they're not wiping out like all the deer in one area. They might take one, right, and then as they move, and it's just a natural way, and they do like how nature does it. They select one, they eat it, and they move on.
What's that fancy word? Natural selection.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I've often told Eric, these things. I've always used the phrase that these things can exist 100 yards from humanity.
Exactly.
You get it. They can be around, and I know, like where I live in a rural area. It's not the city, but it's not deep in the forest. But there is more food with corn, wheat, all the things that's growing. I shoo deer out of my driveway. There's so much wildlife right here, and then you add all the farms around here. Something could be out there. A lot of these farmers too. They don't go out. You always see all the fields, and you'll see a patch of woods. You'll see all these fields, and then if you add on top of that if they're nocturnal, there's a whole different world out there. I could. We go to bed, and there's other things that are out there, alive and kicking and running around, and it's happening right under our noses.
Hell, Bear, I've seen them out under street lights.
Yep.
Hell, Bear and I were riding through a new subdivision one time, and we were lamenting the fact that, damn, here they've come down here and built a bunch of houses right here in this major travel route that we knew that the boogers migrated back and forth through this area. And, of course, they've got street lights up and everything already up out there. Well, kiss my ass if we don't come around the corner, and there's one standing out there in one of them's yard. And he runs up beside the house, and he sits there and he's looking around the house at us as we go driving by.
And what he don't realize is there was one of these lights behind him, and his shadow was thrown out from the light, and he thought he was hidden, but we was watching him from his shadow when he was standing at the corner of the framework of that house.
He was perfectly. Oh yeah, he was perfectly silhouetted. Yeah, and it was. It's so they live right in there, like you said, right in there in amongst us. And hell, there's a lot of towns that they specifically have what a lot of the planners call a shelter belt. Of wildlife or of undeveloped area around part of the town. And that's a perfect place for boogers to live. And it's amazing the places that we've gotten reputable reports from. I mean, hell, the damn forest preserves inside the city limits of Chicago and the suburbs of Chicago. Hell, we've gotten good reports, multiple reports from them on Staten Island and even Long Island. It's the last place in the world you'd think about them being, but they can hide in plain sight right under your nose.
Hell yeah, a park up towards Cleveland called Cuyahoga has a lot of reports out there, and it's if you look at it on the map, it's a preserve right it's not in the middle of the city, but it's not where you expect to ever find anything. But every year there are reports. You know, I think it's just big enough that they can roam in and out, and then at night, you know, they can roam wherever. You know, and hide under the darkness and sprawl out. And as long as they know how to hide, you know, they can be a lot closer than you think.
Well, how many times, Bear, have we jumped them up that were laid out in hay fields? You know,
hay, grass fields, the whole 9 yards. I know exactly what you're about.
Yep. I mean,
I'm going to jump in here real quick and then turn it over to Eric, and then we'll get Matt's take on it. But I'm going to try not to be long-winded on this one. You got to remember, up until the 1960s, I mean, you know, the Patterson-Gimline film come out in 67, so forth and so on. In the 60s, though, we was not a 24/7 world either. It was back in the 60s and the early 70s, a lot of small towns and communities would almost basically roll up their sidewalks at 6 p.m. every evening, you know, and people would go to bed. I mean, it was something accepted like a regiment or regular routine that we wasn't a 24-hour world. Now, due to modernization and industrialization, even people who are living out in the countries now, and most of these people are college kids who graduated in the 60s and the 70s, and they figured out they could get a big tax break by moving out into the country, and they don't have a general idea of nothing out in the country like regular people who was raised out there, like me and Tim and probably you guys. But due to it being a 24-hour world, you got people going to work at 10 o'clock at night and people getting off at 3 a.m. in the morning and different times now, and there's more people out at all hours of the night, whereas they used to not be out that late at night back in the 60s and the 50s and going down the line, you know, because it wasn't feasible to work at night unless you worked in a coal mine, which you didn't give a damn if it was night or day anyway because it was dark. But I'm thinking a lot of the sighting reports, I don't know if it's more of an explosion type deal with the population, or is it the fact that we are now more of a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, go-to-work type world now, and you're out there during the hours when these things are more prevalent in their movements. I'm thinking a lot of people that see them in the dark are either going to work or coming home from work, or either going to the bar or coming home from the bar. But, you know, we kind of just forget about those drunks because, hell, he was drunk anyway, so we ain't no telling what he saw.
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to Eric now, and then Matt can dive into it.
I know that they're on the rise. I mean, they breed. Everything breeds, you know. I think what it is the subdivision that I live in, where I live, I used to hunt here. Right where my house sits, I used to hunt. Coming from the city to out to where I live was a trip when I was a kid, you know. Now it's part of the city. It's not that they're moving in on us; we're moving in on them. Mm-hmm. You know, their patterns, what they do, how they move, it hasn't changed. You know, it's just that the way that we are growing, and as fast as we are growing, and we're taking land so quick, we're actually moving in on them. So the sightings are becoming more and more, because now what you thought was the country is now really the outskirts of a city. You know, you know, they're eating the deer, you know, the honey. They don't have to wait until October through January to get a hunting ticket and go out and hunt. You know, it's an everyday
lucky bastards.
yeah, exactly. You know, it's an everyday thing for them. They're not held to this land you can hunt on, that land you can't hunt on. You know, and so they have that option, and they have that resource to be able to move around, take what they need to take as they're moving, and not deplenish one area from every type of food resource. You know, so that's really my take on you know Donnie's question is the reason why people are seeing more and more sightings. It's because we're moving into their territory, you know, with the way that we are growing, you know, and you know the level of deer population and hunting population. The hunting is going down because we're having land taken away from us. You know, out west, you know, where my son's stationed out in Colorado, you know, there is very little public land out there. You know, very little. It's all privately owned or government owned. You know, it's just it's going by the wayside. So hunters that don't have their own land, we are restricted to these little tiny coves of land. You know, they still have the reins to move freely and do whatever they want. You know, so that's really my take on it. And they are breeding. They are coming back. Look, they've made it through the process of being extinct. You know, they have pushed through the extinction part. We, on the other hand, we are self-imploding. Humans are going to destroy ourselves. The ones that are going to be left are the ones that, you know, have not changed, can survive and have not changed, changed anything for centuries and thousands of years. They do the exact same thing. Where we, on the other hand, keep evolving and evolving and evolving, and you know, eventually it's going to come back to them. You know,
we talk about, you know, Homo sapiens talk about that, you know, save the environment, you know, be environmentally friendly. Everything's got to be, you know, do everything green and everything. Well, hell, the damn boogers, that's all they've ever done. You know, they live in harmony with Mother Nature, whereas, you know, we've raped Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree. Yep.
Well, I think
what do you think?
The rise in reports is something completely different. I'm going against the grain with my answer. I think it's real simple. 40 years ago, if you saw a Bigfoot, who would you tell? Your family, your friends? No one. Nowadays, everybody has access to the entire globe.
Right.
The reports are on the rise because the same reason all information is on the rise, regardless of what it is. We have the internet now. We have websites and television shows and media that puts Bigfoot everywhere. Everybody knows what a Bigfoot is now. It's not taboo to see a Bigfoot anymore. You're not going to be ran out of town. You're not going to be considered the town drunk if you tell your church that you saw one. Instead of telling one or two people that aren't going to tell anybody, you can sign on to the internet and say it once, and it reaches thousands of people and is stored there forever for new generations to read as they come along. So I think that has a tremendous amount to do with the reason that the reports are on the rise. I think Finding Bigfoot, the TV show and the other television shows about Bigfoot that have come along in the past 10 years or so, have a lot to do with it. I don't think a lot of the reports are honest. I think some people make reports because it's cool to see a Bigfoot. They want to be.
No, Matt, you know good.
I know.
Matt, you know better than you know everybody ain't gonna tell no damn lie.
I do agree with what everybody has said about their numbers, but I don't think their numbers have anything to do with the amount of reports that come in. I do agree more people are coming in a proximity of their habitat, but I also think a lot less people are hunting now than were 50 years ago.
Oh yeah,
10-4. It's a dying tradition, and I hate seeing it go. But I can't live forever anyway. I just hate thinking about it in that way. But you're correct.
And it's real interesting what Kain and Eric said, because it lines up with something that I ran across in my own research. Probably a decade ago at this point. I don't know. It seems like a couple of years ago, but then I'm always wrong. Where you find clusters of sightings and Bigfoot activity are generally areas that are high-density ecoregions that have multiple ecosystems in one general area, say a 10-mile radius, where you'll have grasslands, a mountain, bottomlands, a lake,
swamp,
and they're all in close proximity of one another. Well, each one of those ecosystems has its own animals, has its own vegetation, and the Bigfoot will just travel around in those ecoregions, taking a little bit as they go from each ecosystem. So they're never just in one area decimating, the deer population, like, Kain and Eric were talking about.
Right.
It's a system that works, that takes care of itself, and it also allows them to remain hidden, because a lot of people think, well, if there is a Bigfoot out there, you would notice it because they would have to eat so much. Well, it's a buffet for them. It's not just, them sitting down and pigging out in one area. They can take a little bit from each section and just go unnoticed and keep on surviving. Like Eric said, not changing their routine, doing the same thing they've been doing for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But that's my 2 cents on it. Our next question, Bear, I'll ask you this one from Wesley Perkins. He says, this question arises from an experience I had about 35 years ago while deer hunting. We hear of some people talk about boogers having a pungent smell associated with them. Is this a naturally occurring smell, or do they have scent glands they can turn off and on, or do they seek out cover scents to mask their odor? Why do Bigfoot stink?
They don't take a damn bath. It don't rain often enough.
Well, that is part of it, Bear.
Yeah, I know.
Anything lives outside smells funky.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, including me. My wife tells me that every once or twice a week when I, neglect my weekly bath. But no, these things already have an odor. I mean, take for instance, and I'm going to be basic at first, and then I'm going to get complicated. We have dogs in our house. During the winter months, of course, we let our dogs outside daily. We try to keep them outside if the weather is good, and then we'll bring them in at night because of my wife's wishes, not mine. I'm not one of those people that like having a lot of dogs run around in the house. But my point being, if the dog's outside during the day, it starts picking up in its hair all these scents and smells, and especially in the summer, it's beginning to get warmer now, and you can let the dogs in the evening, and they smell like a stinky-ass old dog to me now. It's not like it was back in the wintertime when, they wasn't sweating or it wasn't cold, hot outside, but they'd come in smelling like an old dog now. Especially in the South, the conditions with the temperature and everything making things hotter, and of course the odor will be more obnoxious. I've investigated reports of these things smelling like a skunk. I've been investigating reports they're accused of being the mustiest dog you could ever smell in your life. I've heard of bad BO, and that's their description, not mine. BO understanding to mean body odor. Of course, they don't have right guard, so they can't take care of that. It's natural. It's a natural scent. But, and here comes the complicated part. Pheromones, pheromones, pheromones. I know this. When a booger gets excited, upset, shocked, scared, nervous, so forth and so on, for some strange reason, they will exude an odor that is just pungent. I mean, it stinks. It'll make your eyes water depending on the surrounding temperature. If it's hotter outside, this thing hits you like a ton of bricks quicker than it would if it's cooler outside. When it's cooler outside and these things get in an excited or agitated stage, I think it's a pheromone that they subconsciously release through stress, fear, or whatever. I don't think it's a defense mechanism. I think it's a natural reaction that occurs when these things get into a certain agitated or excitable state.
Like when you get pulled over and you start farting?
Well, that's Kumbo's department there. He's the flagellant one. But, I've seen these things, and, you know, Kumbo can attest to this. I believe Matt can too, especially that little incident we run into down there at Lake of the Pines in Texas, and, you know, when we was bluff charged. But we've had these things all around us once we would call them in with our various calls. And, you know, it'd be pleasant all around us until something changes. And when something changes, it's just like you hit a light switch. Well, when this change would come about, it would seem like these things are getting more agitated or upset or more courageous. Something happened to change that particular moment. Whenever those changes come about, that's when you start smelling this skunky, wet, dull, pungent. I mean,
it'll take your breath away.
Yes, it will. And,
where you can't even gag you so bad that you can't even draw a full breath when it's bad. You know.
Right, because then you start worrying because you're so nervous about the given situation, and you're ready to puke your guts out. That's how bad this odor is. But you know, you're so worried, and see, humans are that way to a certain degree too. I don't smoke cigarettes, and I can be around people at times and I can smell their body odor. And what it is, some people can't help it. Some people sweat more than other people, and it's through the pores of your skin. And if people take a certain medication like fish oil pills, you know, a lot of people take that for arthritis and things like that. Whenever they sweat, it comes through the pores of your skin, and the odor could be whatever they ate for lunch the day before or the day before that or whatever. And as Kumbo and I know, these things eat stuff that'll make a buzzard puke on a gut wagon. And the older they get, a lot of people don't realize this either. The ones that collect roadkill and start raiding dumpsters and garbage cans, 9 times out of 10, these are the ones who are older, who've left the troop for various reasons. Probably their teeth are about worn out. They need softer tissue things to chew into, and they're the ones that garbage dump dive and garbage can dive and seen on the side of the road toting off roadkill. And I also believe these older ones are the ones that will start predating on calves and rabbits and quail and so forth and so on. I still honestly believe that it's a reactionary deal, pheromone led type situation when it really gets rank, and the smell is just like you were sprayed by a skunk. And a lot of people accidentally in their description of this type odor will describe it as a skunk type odor, which leads others to think that this thing uses a defense mechanism like a skunk does to spray people down with. No, that don't basically happen that way. But the smell is there, and when the situation merits it, things can stink in a hurry.
Yeah, I've often wondered, where physically, where did that damn scent come from? And, does it come out of there? Do they have anal glands or something that they dump when they get agitated? Like a skunk basically releases their scent from an anal gland, and of course, we know that dogs and cats can, when they're really upset, they can, involuntarily express or dump their anal glands. I wonder, is it coming for that, or is it some kind of gland in their armpits? They got nuclear grade, sweat glands in their armpits or something. And all I know is that I ain't going looking for them. Yeah.
Well,
but I know that we.
More.
Go ahead.
I'd love for Tim to share this with the audience, and Kain and Eric may already know this. Tim, describe a female Bigfoot smell at certain times of the year, and we found this out and figured it out. What does it smell like?
Well, it smells sort of sick sweet, and
like honeysuckle.
Almost like fermenting honeysuckles or concentrated fermenting roses or something, or like Bear said, like really ultra concentrated strong honeysuckles. And I've heard a couple, and yeah, it's a sick sweet smell, but I have smelt it several times out researching when I knew I was in real close to them. I could just, my dog, Bo would have abandoned me, and my skin would be crawling, but I never could see the dadgum things. And then I came across a couple of sighting reports where some people were camped out in a little old pup tent, and one of them came down. They could hear it outside messing around in their camp, and one of them came down and looked in through the mosquito netting of the tent at them. And they were so close that the thing was breathing on them. And they were smelling that, and they were overwhelmed by that sick, sweet smell. And I thought, son of a gun, it's their breath. And, but I believe, I'm not 100% sure that it's always that it's the female, but it may be. I don't know. But I know one thing, that if you're out there and you smell that sick, sweet smell, you are right on top of one. I'm talking about 20 feet or less, and probably less. And but it's like if anybody smelled honeysuckle, it's like concentrated. Super concentrated, sort of like fermenting honeysuckle.
Well, the best thing I can describe it to, if people listening to the show and they are country folks, it smells just like a cow chewing its cud in the early spring when the grass is fresh green. That's the smell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty close to it. Yeah.
Eric, have you guys?
Or especially if he's been eating a bunch of sweet feed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, have you guys ran across any Bigfoot related odors during your research?
We ran across odors. I always thought it was just Kain, but there was a couple times the sweet odor. I'm glad you put that sweet odor in a perspective there, because I really couldn't nail it down as what I was smelling, but it had that poignant like a sweet, but yet it's like looking at something
sour.
Yeah, and it's like literally looking like at something you've never tasted before, and it looks like ass. But, and you taste it, and you're like, you take one bite, you're still not sure whether or not it even tastes good, and you take another bite. That's the smell, and I've been very close to that smell before. Now, for you to put it in like, how close, that really, that kind of throws me a little bit to know that I was actually that close. Now the strong, sickening, gut wrenching odor of just pure death. Kain and I both have come across that, and now I don't know. We kind of talked about it a little bit. The odor, is it the younger males? That have the more testosterone, or is it the older, the stronger, the alpha that really puts off that odor, of whatever the situation may be that you're in. But yeah, Kain and I have come across that very gut wrenching smell. One time that I can remember. And that was actually during or right after an encounter when we came across it. And that's when we started toying with, is this the younger males, the sentinels, or is this really the alpha? Is it the alpha that really puts out this pungent?
I can sort of answer that. I believe that any of the males can put that out once they get to a certain stage in their development, and
I think maturity.
And the reason I say that any of them can do it, I've smelt that smell when I've had a not so good encounter with an alpha, when he was very agitated. But I also one night. There's an area that we research. I used to research quite frequently in a place we call Armstrong Corner, and it's where a gravel road goes out through a large field that's usually planted in wheat or soybeans, or they'll alternate wheat in the wintertime and spring, winter and spring, and then after they combine the wheat, they come in and they plant soybeans. Well, this was up in probably late April, early May. The wheat was up pretty good, but it was still green, and the wheat was up probably 18 inches, something like that, still green. But this road is running pretty much due east and more or less east and west, and then it takes a 90-degree turn to the north. And right there at that turn, it sort of corners up against a section of woods, and you've got a field, a big field to the northeast of you, a big field to the northwest of you, and a field to the south. And a field to the south, sort of a somewhat overgrown field to the southwest, and everything to the southeast of you is thick woods. And anyway, it's a really, really good place for calling. And we've seen all kind of crap there. We've seen wolves there on numerous occasions. We've seen cougars there. We've seen bobcats in there, and.
It's basically a game trail that runs through that area.
And we were also, the very first time we ever went there, and I called, we got charged by the alpha. And he came roaring up through the brush and everything like a dadgum freight train runaway, and he busted out of the brush and was coming across the last about 40 yards of wheat field before he got to us, and we had to shine our spotlights in his face to stop him. But anyway, let me get back to the story. All right, we were there one night, and there were 5 of us. There were 3 researchers from Georgia, and myself and another guy, and we were in my big F250. And we had parked right there at Armstrong Corner. The wheat was up about 18 inches high, and it was still green. We'd been doing some calls and had been getting some answers from off in the distance down in the woods to the southeast of us, and they were sort of toying with us, and we would get answers, but they weren't coming any closer. And so anyway, we'd been there probably, 25, 30 minutes, and maybe a little longer. I went walking around the back end of the truck, headed towards the driver's door, because just inside, in the pocket inside the door, I had a lighter weight, real powerful flashlight, and I had in my hand a big, heavy portable spotlight, and I was wanting to put it down and get that lighter flashlight. When I came walking around the truck and was just about even with the dadgum back end of the running boards there by the front of the bed, just behind the back door. This is a 4-door truck. All of a sudden, out from under the freaking running board, up jumps a damn booger, about 6.5 feet tall. And he starts beating feet away from me, shot past the end of the truck, nearly run over one of the boys from Georgia, and goes, and around the corner he goes, beating feet up the road. And me and another guy both saw that it was a booger, and we yelled, "It's a booger, get him!" And we all busted out running after him. And, of course, there wasn't a chance in hell we were going to catch him. He was running off and leaving us. But that son of a gun, about the time he rounded that corner, he turned loose of that stench. And it stopped. There was one guy that was way out. The booger was running up the left-hand side of the road. There was one guy that was running right up the right-hand side of the road. The others of us were right in behind him. When he released that stench, the 4 of us that were right behind him, it stopped us in our tracks. It literally took our breath away to the point that we were bent over, grabbing hold of our knees and gagging. The guy who was over to the right-hand side of the road was still getting it. And I have to say, give him credit, that son of a gun, he had an overdrive gear I didn't know he had. and the booger really turned it on in, and he hauled ass up the dadgum road, and there was a little old branch that cut out across this, and that's the creek for you city folks, little small creek that ran out across this field, and it was a little bridge that went over the creek about, maybe 200 yards or so north of us. That son of a gun hit that bridge, and by the way, there was a really bright moon up that night, and so we could see this good. Plus, one of the guys managed to flip on a spotlight and was shooting up the road. When the son of a gun got to that little bridge, he did the most beautiful run and dive you ever saw, and we were close enough that we heard him hit the water in the creek. Nice. And about that time, we managed to get our composure enough that the other 4 of us jumped in the truck and go hauling ass up there. By that time, the guy that was still chasing him, he got close to the bridge, and when the son of a gun had run to jump off in the creek, he had crossed from the left side of the road to the right side of the road, and the guy ran into the stench at that point, and it doubled him up gagging. And we ran up, and I slammed on the brakes, and we skidded up onto the bridge, and we all jumped out with our lights shining both ways, because I was telling him, I said, look both ways, because he could have, gone double back under the bridge. And we did a bunch of looking around, but nobody had the guts to crawl up under that bridge to see if he's hiding up under that thing. We didn't have enough armament with us for to do that kind of a little adventure. But anyway, that son of a gun had sneaked up on us, had belly crawled up on us through that wheat or up through the ditch or somehow, and we had no idea that the son of a gun was there. But he sure, when he dumped his scent glands, he sure stopped us from chasing him. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of will, but there wasn't a way that we could do it. I mean, he literally, it took my breath away from me, and I started gagging.
Keep on rocking and rolling. I can get wrapped up in this. You guys have hit the nail on the head. I think it's actually a relic type native. In other words, what Eric initially mentioned, he said that he believes that they are Native American, and I'd rather use the word native, but we don't mean no insult by it in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Me and Kumbo, we have spent many a mile going back and forth to a million locations having this exact same discussion, hadn't we, Tim?
Sure have, and we've seen the same thing, that as the boogers in an area got to know us, their reactions to us changed tremendously, and they went from being belligerent to apathetic to then just jacking with us on purpose, messing with us, which I think that's the younger ones. I think, and I honest to God think they're counting coup on us, just like the Plains Indians used to do.
Yeah. But once when they recognize that you're out there, and then they understand after a certain length of time that you don't mean any harm. You're not out there to bother the young ones or the females. You're not out there to mark trees to be cut in the near future and so forth and so on. Even toting or carrying a pistol on your hip or whatever. After a certain length of time, they adjust to the fact that you don't mean any harm. And, I preach respect and patience, and that's the level of, in regard to when I say respect, they realize that, at every little sound that they make on purpose to catch our reactions, that we're not slapping down on the side of our hip to snatch that hog leg out and twirl around and point it at them. They realize then that, we are smart enough and different from all these other hairless type two-legged people wearing all these different colored clothing outfits on over their bodies. That
no doubt in my mind, and I will argue this with anybody, that there is a DNA within both of us that we share.
I agree. Keep going.
The traits that this thing has in their face, staring in his eyes, man, it was looking at a soul. I mean, there's not many animals out there that you can really look at in the eye and see a soul. The facial features were had very predominant Native American in it. There's no doubt in my mind after my sighting, I will share. I will say that there is human trait in them, most definitely human DNA that we share.
Yep, I agree with you. I believe that boogers they're either some kind of an archaic human species that survived and was able to maintain its genetic uniqueness separate from us, but still so close to us that that they could interbreed with us if they wanted to, or that they're a human species that took a separate evolutionary path at some time in the distant past. And but I think they're a whole lot closer to us than they are to the great apes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I believe they coexist with us, because they don't directly compete with us. I'm not an anthropologist by any means, but I know their social customs, their habitat, their feeding habits, their physical and cultural development, and their biological characteristics are different from ours, but they're still so close to us that they could interbreed with us if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think there's probably differences for, people have different sightings, and they see different things. So there's probably just not one, but there's probably several of these branches.
And I heard something going. The problem with us when we get to starting about something, we never actually finish it because we branch off into so many damn different directions that every one of them has very important meaning towards what we're discussing in the first place. What we call a Bigfoot and a Sasquatch, we call them boogers in the South. I said, what in the hell is that?
Good evening, folks, and welcome to another edition of Bigfoot Outlaw Radio. And tonight we have our buddy, fellow outlaw, Matt Knapp, here with us. You out there, Matt?
I am here, rooting and ready to go.
Good. And of course, got our fellow research partner, Bear. He's here in the house with us.
Yeah, how you doing there, partner?
Yeah, and I am Tim Coonbow Baker here from lovely state of North Missouri here, trying to keep from getting blown away by a tornado tonight. And our special guest tonight is our friend Kain Michael from southeastern Ohio, and he has one of his research buddies with him. So I'm going to turn it over to Kain. And how you doing there, Kain?
I'm doing good, guys. How you doing?
All righty. Good to hear from. Good to have you on here again tonight. So I'm going to let you introduce your buddy.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, as always, guys. And my research partner is a longtime friend and fellow research partner, Ep15. We've been doing this together for several years now, and I'll just hand it over to Eric.
How you doing, guys? This is Eric Tipton, Kain's research partner. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on the show with you guys. It really means a lot to myself and to Kain, being recognized by you guys. It really says a lot, and I appreciate it.
Well, y'all earned it your own self, guys.
Yeah, we're proud to have you. Yeah, you're sort of Bear mentioned it earlier, but you guys now are sort of where Bear and I were 20 years ago. Just getting started out. Well, we've been researching for quite a while, but y'all are about the age we were at 20 years ago. So,
right.
Yeah.
I'll trade places with them if they give me the age.
Yeah.
I ain't giving up the number. Sorry.
Tonight we've got a sort of I don't know if you'd call it a roundtable, but we're going to do a question and answer show where we're taking we've gotten a bunch of questions that were submitted by our listeners, and we're going to try to get through as many of them as we can, and we might get through 2, and we might get through 15 of them. Don't know, but we're gonna give them a shot and work our way through these questions. So I'm gonna turn everything over to Matt now.
All right. More than likely, we'll probably get through 2 of them. But let's just jump off in here. Kain and Eric, you're our guests. I'm going to throw the first one to you guys first. It comes from Bill Loika. He said he's going to ask the same question he asked last time we did a show like this. Apparently, we didn't get to it. Sorry, Bill, but here it is now. He wants everybody's opinions on what a Bigfoot is.
I'm going to let Eric start that because Eric's had a full-on sighting up close. So I think I'll turn that to Eric first, and then I'll comment after.
I'll tell you what, guys. Prior to my actual full-on sighting, I really didn't look at him as any more than just a big hairy ape. Since my sighting and staring eye to eye with this thing, and there's
inches off the human tree, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And, you know, they've settled in different areas. But, you know, the one thing I can attest to is the intelligence. I mean, people don't give them enough credit of how smart they are. And you know, in our research that we've done, their intelligence is undeniable. You know, there's a reason why they don't, that people aren't getting pictures of them, and they think that they're just this big dumb animal out there, and they're wrong. You know, there is, I tend to agree with you that it's probably like just another branch off the primate tree that evolved separately from us, but they're smart. Yeah. And, you know, they're not smarter than us in technology, but they damn sure are smarter than us in the woods. They're survivalists. Yeah. And I think their strategy, you know, we've dealt a lot, and I tend to think that somehow, like, as a human, when we're out there and we're trying to outsmart them, we're thinking of the next step or the next two steps. And they sure seem to be able to outdo our strategy. Like their strategy in the woods is better than ours. You know, they're you know, we'll go around over here to the left. You know, we'll try to flank them, and they've already gotten past that. You know, their critical thinking when it comes to their home, their environment, their survival is way smarter than ours.
Yeah,
they've already done it.
We're trying to outsmart them, and we're trying to outsmart them in their living room.
They've already done it. They've already done it with Kain and I. I mean, they've already adapted in the area that we're in. They've already adapted to our routine, and they've already changed their routine to what we do because we're there so much that they have literally adapted to us now, and they do things totally different now, you know, than when we first started going. And that's logic.
Yeah, and that's a human trait. That's logic.
Exactly.
Keep going.
Exactly.
I'm just listening to you guys